start off the second part of this album review, we have the track Monsters, which is, in my opinion, the worst track on the album. And by that, when I say worst track on the album, doesn't mean I hate it. No, I don't hate it, but I'm not overly keen on it. It definitely doesn't really fit in with the rest of the album. The rest of the album seems to be on a certain level, as for Monsters definitely seems to be pretty below that. So let's explain the song and then you'll start to see where I'm coming from. So Monsters starts with that typical sound that they have going for this album, which is the kind of synth pop thing of early years, and that's pretty much constantly going. It's very synth pop orientated. Eventually you get a guy over one of these intercom channels saying just a certain line, and then it gets into the overall band. So the actual riff here for the intro with the guitars, it's pretty simple stuff and everything, fitting along with that kind of synth element stuff, but you know, having that kind of metal vibe that because it is a metal band, Teramaze. And near the end of your riff, you're getting a bit of you know, intricate guitar stuff going on. So instead of it just being the simple stuff, you've got a bit more of a more kind of talented riffs going on. So he does a bit of flourishes and stuff. But as it gets into the first verse, this is kind of where you start to see the problem. Everything kind of stops on the metal front and it goes very heavy into that synth element. So Monsters is the track which incorporates the most of this tone they are going for, but I personally feel like they're going way too heavily into it. I admire the tone because obviously bands can all sound very similar these days. A lot of people would agree with this. It's hard to find a new band that has unique kind of flavors to them, introduces something new, gives you something to think about, something you've never heard before. So I appreciate Teramaze for doing this sound and tone, but what I don't like with Monsters is just the fact that they seem to kind of lose the Teramaze, you know, genre. They seem to forget that they are metal. Monsters just comes across more like the kind of synth pop of the early years, with hints of metal instead of it being the other way around. So it does mean that it is different to the rest of the songs because it takes more of this approach with the synths, so it makes it sound very different. But for me, I don't personally like it. The verse has guitars, but it's just a strum, and then eventually another strum. And that is basically it. And the tone that the guitar is using for is so heavily in that 70s guitar kind of tone. There's like a massive lack of gain and everything. And it's just a guitar that would be in one of these old school pop bands with like their stupid cotton headbands and things, and doing yoga or something with their pink unitard stuff and things like that. So that's kind of the tone the guitar's going for. Then obviously you got all the synth in the background, and then the vocalist is just being, you know, all this kind of calm singing style. It's very pop, and near the end of the verse, the guitar will start doing a bit more in the way of flourishing techniques, doing a bit of the occasional whittle and things. Instead of it just being the chords, there'll be a bit more intricate finger picking stuff. But the chorus, the sound just opens up to this dancing anthemic thing. So it's just like, yeah, now the whole band's here, but the vibe is so heavy in this synth element. And then leading out again, you've got the intricate guitar stuff, and you like it. Like, he's a good guitar player, so I do like the riffs where he's being a bit more, you know, flavorful with what he's doing. But other than that, the rest of the song is very synth driven, and I'm not really liking it. I like the vocalist, I do like the intricate stuff. The overall album that surrounds Monsters makes this a lot more digestible, but if this is your one track that you get and it's the only one you listen to, it's pretty poor. It really does not work. You have to basically support it with all the other songs that surround it, as well as just what Teramaze are and how much you've come to get used to them and appreciate them, and that will basically get you through Monsters. Even the solo kind of lacks, with it being quite simple and a little bare. So it's most disappointing. So let's get into the next track, Weight of Humanity. So, Weight of Humanity, I would say this is kind of in the similar lines of From Savior to Assassin. I would say Weight of Humanity is one of these more kind of upbeat, fast-paced kind of fun songs, like, you know, From Savior to Assassin, which was a really short, simple, but very fun and bombastic song. As for Weight of Humanity, even though this song is similar, this is for the people who want a lot more out of the song structures and variety going on. So this is actually 6 minutes 54, so pretty much 7 minutes. And to say how fast they go through the song, they reach the second chorus in just over a minute. So they've got the rest of that time to do other things. So that kind of puts perspective on just how fast-paced the song is and how much they have to keep changing things, because at just over a minute the second chorus being done, you got to think there's 7 minutes, so there's what, like 6 minutes left to basically fill out. How many more choruses can we really do? So obviously they have to not do a ton of verse, chorus, unless this will be painfully terrible. So getting into it, the song starts off, you know, more energetic than other songs, which is a bit more of the kind of mid-tempo pace and everything, with the focus on the synth. This is more kind of heavy aggression, more in that metal tone, just with that slight synth pop element being shoved in the background. When you get to your first verse, you've got multiple levels as per usual. So you've got the first part, which is a bit restrained and everything. The vocalist just in his typical area, maybe a slightly more aggressive, just basically trying to keep a good catchy beat going. It's basically the second part of the verse which always kind of remains consistent and is actually the best part, because the vocalist starts flowing with his singing style, so his voice just absolutely flows, the guitar's going at a pretty decent speed and everything, the keys and everything just swooping and being this real big epic stuff. The chorus is really big, melodic, not melodic, but you know, has good melody to it, and sounds incredible. Near the end of the chorus, the vocalist gets a bit more aggressive. That will then lead into the second verse. The second verse, instead of it being just trying to keep the beat and just a bit restrained, here the singer is being a lot more kind of aggressive in his delivery until it gets to that second part, where, as I say, it's consistent and then keeps that you know, soaring stuff that going on, that soars its way into this open musical chorus, which then leads into your first solo. I said first. So this one is quite short actually, it's mostly just there for speed. So it's mostly shred, it is short, which is kind of disappointing, but again, first solo. So after that we basically go back to the verse, which then leads back to the chorus. We have kind of had a break and everything. It is overall been great fun, so getting it for the third time actually isn't too bad, because they have sort of altered things. The verses aren't usually the same. The chorus, they've elongated it the kind of second time through. In the first one it was a bit shorter. So after the third chorus everything goes melodic, proper melodic, so everything goes quite clean. They lose the gain, the kind of piano comes in. It's very bright, very light, flourishes on the piano. It's very nice. And then the melodic singing comes in. which is great because I always say this in my reviews. It's always great to have high energy, but not always be consistent with high energy, because then it'll start getting stale. It's good to have completely differentiating parts of a song, some fast-paced stuff, then some mid-tempo, aggressive parts, melodic parts, and intense parts, simple parts, just to keep everything so engaging and constantly flowing, so you never know what's coming. You don't get bored of a repetitive formula. So I like this. You just kind of are able to lay back, have a breathe, have the relaxation part of the song, but the song also has its intense moments. So after this melodic part, we get into our second solo, the second solo being the melodic part. So it's very, very slow, very musical, very melodic. Again, it lasts quite short, but it's kind of like the yin and yang kind of solos in this song. You've got your fast, intense, and then you've got your soft, melodic. So it is two completely different kind of solos into one song. It is unfortunate that both are short, so it seems that the guitarist kind of basically said, well, there's this length of that and this length of that, and then put together that is the length of the solo that I think is required in the song, because I shouldn't be taking too much of the time. I kind of say to hell with that. I think they should have been, you know, proper length solos. But again, there is two solos. The rest of the song is fantastic. So, am I that disappointed and moody and really going to be, you know, hating on the band because the solos are kind of short? Not at all. I don't really have any complaints with it. It's basically just a thought, but there is no real emotional attachment to this thought of they are kind of short. It would be good to be longer, but I'm not overly, you know, emotional about it. So yeah, it's a really good song. So let's get into the next one, which is Fact Resistant Human. Fact Resistant Human, we are kind of given something slightly different yet again. So the entire band actually start all together at once at the beginning of this song, so you don't really have an intro. And it's kind of melodic. It's clean guitars, it's piano with you know, the melodic kind of vocals and everything. So that is pretty much your entire verse now. So we haven't actually had that. So this is new. It's taking it in a bit of a more obviously melodic nature, as well as it being slightly darker and vibe as well, instead of that kind of bright pop kind of thing. The chorus though, it brings it up to being a little heavier, so you know, all the gain is put back in and everything. But the chorus, again, it's musical, but it is kind of in that more of a darker kind of element, even though it has that same pop thing, which kind of keeps a slight brightness to it. But it definitely is darker compared to what has previously been done on the album. Going back into the second verse, it starts pretty much exactly the same, and the second part of the verse, you actually have the guitars go onto the kind of heavy channel, so they kind of are doing an interlude sort of over everything else, which just makes everything a bit more kind of heavy. And then you get back into your chorus, and then after that everything's a bit more heavier now, so we don't really go back to that kind of melodic side again. So it's a lot of different stuff musical wise. So we have it being heavier, we have some slightly breathy vocals from the singer as he holds on to certain words and then kind of leaves into it, and then he starts enunciating near the end, and then he starts he finishes with that, and then starts just singing normally with kind of all the heavy stuff kind of going on. And then you get nearer to the end of the song, which you get your chorus again, and you kind of noticing there's not really a solo, so the solo is actually coming at the end of the song, which is sort of weird. You could argue it gives variation because it's not always the same placing, so it's not really predictable anymore, because, you know, it always comes kind of after the second chorus. There's a bit of play with the whole band, and then it's always a solo every single time. So it changes it up, it changes the format, so, you know, can't really argue with that. It does change the format and varies it up. The only problem is the song does kind of feel like it's gone without it, even though there is a solo there at the end. Solo at the end also seems a little short. It kind of just seems that it's a solo just for basically trying to end the song instead of it being there for a solo itself. It's like the guitarist has kind of come in, it's like, I need something to end the song on, something more musical than just trying to finish it on just typical kind of chords and little fancy bits here and there. So let's try and do a lead and then to get it into the end of the song. So it's like, oh, that was a great ending. But it's not really a focus on showing talent, you know, making a big solo. It does sound good, it's basically just all I'm getting at is it just seems a little short and not really like it's big enough and there's played enough to really come across as a proper, concise solo. It comes across like a bit more of a kind of restrained, lacking one, even though what is done is fairly good. So yeah, it's again a good track. You have obviously the kind of melody verses, it's a bit darker in nature. The solo has been moved to a different kind of place. You still get them. The second verse, you've got the mix of melody to the more kind of heavy bit and stuff. You've still got the great kind of vocals, fair bit of range with the guitars and everything. You know, going from clean to leads. You know, doing some flourishes here and there. So again, it's a perfectly great track. So let's get on to the second to last track, which is the 1% Disarm. So this track, the 1% Disarm, actually has a little nugget of something quite special near the end of the song. But we have the beginning to get through first, so we'll have to wait until we get to that. So this song is back to its kind of mid-tempo, kind of bulky sounding beat. So because it's a lot more kind of rounded, the guitars and everything and the drums are a lot more kind of bass heavy and things, and the bass a bit more forward, and the keys basically just being there just to kind of fill out the sound, not, you know, be overly, you know, intense and flourishing and things like that. What you are left with then is this, you know, darker, more kind of creepy vibe, and then the vocalist is just singing in a kind of relaxed kind of tone and everything. It's a mid-tempo pace, maybe a little tad slower, just to keep that, you know, momentum of creepiness. If it's too fast and everything while being a bit rounded, you're going to lose that kind of creepy vibe. It'll just be a bit intense. So that's basically it until the pre-chorus. The pre-chorus, the vocalist gets a bit more direct in his delivery. The pace also quickens in the verse before it reaches the pre-chorus. The pre-chorus, the singer mostly just kind of goes a lot more direct, so with the guitars. And that is kind of mostly it. You have your chorus to open the sound up a little bit, but it keeps that creepy vibe going. You got your melodic part again in the songs to kind of break up the monotony of just it being, you know, heavy and brooding. So it goes towards a darker melodic, so it's not, you know, being all fairy tale. It is just basically, it starts piano with vocals, eventually the drums come in, eventually the guitars comes in, and then it kind of tries lifting it up. And then you get a really short guitar solo. It is really short, it's kind of melodic, a little bit of speed, and then he's kind of out, and that is it. It is just the first solo, so it does seem that there's going to be a second one. It'll be short, and they'll basically just stick the two together and say, well, overall that is this long, therefore that's how long the solo is. Which, yeah, I just don't like that way of thinking. But there you have it. So again, solo's fine. You can tell it's a talented musician, but you're not really getting anything out of him to really portray how good he is. So basically, the nugget of something unusual and new that comes in the end is basically after the singer is just singing, you don't really expect it coming, then all of a sudden you got this really yelly vocal coming in. I have no idea if it is the singer, because it doesn't really sound like him, but again, it could just be him yelling and shouting. and that could obviously alter his voice. It'll kind of deepen it out and everything, add more bass. So it could still be him, because it is just a very different area when you start shouting to singing. Or it could be one of the other members, it could be a special guest, I have no idea. There's nothing saying featuring anywhere, so I don't have a clue who it is. But it does sound different. It is yelling, it is shouting, the pace is fast and aggressive. When he stops, the guitars are doing all these, you know, flourishing stuff. It's not leads or anything, it's basically just a riff, but they're doing something intricate. And then it leads back into the shouting, and he's just shouting his head off, and then the pacing's going quick. It's really fat and aggressive, heavy gain sound. And then he just immediately drops out, and then the other singer comes in. You can kind of feel the brakes being slammed on with the rest of the band as they start trying to cut it up into more kind of chugging chords and everything. They're trying to keep the momentum going, so they just fully cut it off. It's going to be a little weird and everything, so they just kind of slow it down. And then it goes into the chorus, and then there's melody. And then the end of the song, this is where you get the second solo. It's a key solo, it is fast, it's intense, it only lasts maybe 5 seconds. And then you get back into the shouting of the vocalist, so it basically just ends extremely heavy and things with the guitar flourishing and stuff. So, yeah, sort of disappointing on the solos, but the rest of the song is great. It's a dark vibe, unlike other tracks, which are a bit more of that upbeat stuff. We have had an element of darkness in one song, but this is a very kind of dark, broody song compared to the rest. So this is the darkest by a pretty large margin, I would personally say. So, yeah, good track. I do like the new voice, even though it's slightly difficult to know what he's saying. I do appreciate the new kind of sound. It is not overly singing, because it is shouting, it is proper shouting, so I wouldn't really class it as singing. I also don't exactly know what he is saying, so I basically just use it as just a kind of instrument. It is a sound that just adds an emotion to the song, and that is how I take it. And as far as that goes, it is short, it's only the once. If it was in every bloody song, I would probably find it very irritating, but it was just a small little portion in a really overall great album, so I really like it, I appreciate it. I wouldn't rather have the actual vocalist. I would like him to be there. If I had the choice of not to have him and have the original, or to have him, I would choose to have him, because it does add a great variety. So that is what I think on that. So last track now, which is Depopulate. So let's get into it. So, Depopulate, this is for all them people who really like big epic songs filled to the brim with variation, the real actual progressive metal stuff, because even though this band kind of goes by progressive metal, I would say that it's not really progressive metal. Like Darkwalker is pure progressive metal, this is a bit more simple. You can argue it's progressive, but it's very slight. As for Depopulate, this is progressive metal, and it's pretty much 12 minutes, so you've got a big song, a lot of stuff going on, a lot to talk about. So starting off, it is actually the vocalist pretty much by himself. He has an effect on his voice, and it's just this really kind of bouncy, fun kind of style and rhythm that he's using. And then when the whole band comes in, everything is quite bouncy and has a real kind of beat to it. So it's a pretty kind of fun song and everything. And even when the chorus hits, it just is even more intense. It's just this real party kind of beat to it. And when it gets into the second verse, it's actually entirely different. It's an amazing sounding verse. Like, it's one of the best parts about this song. I always love hearing this verse, because the vocalist, he's so smooth in his delivery, and it's just so musical, his delivery, and everything is just soft. Like, nothing's being frantic or everything. It's just a whole verse here. Everything just has this amazing musical flow to it, and it's amazing. And then the second part of it, the vocalist just puts more power behind his voices to put more of this powerful delivery out, and it just sounds absolutely amazing. You get back to the chorus, obviously you got that real bouncy beat and everything to it, and it's really really catchy. And you're getting back into the verse of this beautiful like soaring melody thing from the overall band, with the more energetic second half. And then you got this first verse, you've got the chorus again with the upbeat stuff, and then you've got your softer stuff with just piano and vocals and acoustic. And then you've got like a little bit of a solo here, and then you've got a little bit of a solo somewhere else, and then you've got a really fast solo, then you've got another solo somewhere else. So you've got these little lead sections that are really small, but you do have your actual lead, which is just fairly longish. It's not massively long, but it's not short either. So it's a perfectly length solo that is full of energy, full of speed. And then you've got your melodies and things with your soft stuff, and then you've got your melodic part after the solo, the incremental build back into your chorus, and then it ends in the kind of arena anthemic way of just the vocals just going whoa, 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 and he just keeps repeating that as the guitars start fading out, and then all you're left with is the vocalist just going whoa, whoa, over and over again until eventually he comes to his end. And that is the song, Depopulate. So 11 minutes, 58 seconds, so pretty much 12 minutes of fun, bombastic energy, amazing soaring, swooping elements with the vocalist and the band, real catchy chorus, musical elements, melodic elements, a lot of lead sprinkled throughout, and then a big fast-paced solo in the kind of third section of the song, and then it just ends in this beautiful, like, everyone just fading out with these woes and everything, so I'm ending a little anthemic there. So an incredible track. It is definitely the most fun, interesting song, loads of stuff going on, got some great elements to it, so you could easily argue it is maybe the best song on the album. And for those people who really are musically looking for something that really plays with the senses and something that intrigues the brain cells, instead of basically they die with blandness, Depopulate is the song for you. Pure progressive metal, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of interesting things. As for the simpler minded people who just want something to not really use their brain with, From Savior to Assassin is incredibly catchy, very simple, full of energy. People who want the energy but something that is not overly complicated or overly long, you've got Weight of Humanity. If you want a really poppy kind of song, like metal, but they put a massive front on the pop, then you've got the track Monsters. You want something darker, you got Fact Resistant Human. You want yelling, you got the 1% Disarm in there. There's a lot of variation on the album, and it has this unique tone that constantly runs throughout. So you can clearly tell I really do like this album, and that is the case. I really like the album. So where would I rank it? What score would I give it? So the highest score I've given for this year is probably an 8.5, which I believe is the only one which I put with Solaris's new album Darkest Days. So that's the high so far. It's not my favourite album though, even though it does have the highest score of this year. My favourite album of the year so far is Dark Water's Human. This is the best album that I have heard this year, but I only gave that an 8.4, so you'd think, well, if that's my favourite, then why would I give Solaris that 0.1 of a score higher? It's not my favourite. Why is Dark Water not higher? Well, I gave that 0.1 of a score less, mostly because Solaris did a really good job compared to their first album, so they deserved a few more extra points because of that. It is one of the more easier albums to get into. It's a lot more fun. Dark Water is a very complicated album, and that is kind of why I took that score off to not really put it on the 8.5, just because it is a very complex album. It's a very long album. There's a lot to that album, so a lot of people may not really have the mindset to really appreciate that album, really go into it. I've seen fans of the band that kind of hate on that album for just being boring, but I just don't think they have the mindset to really figure out that there is actually loads there. They're more into just, it's heavy, it's intense, therefore I can tell it's talented, without really seeing the melodic side of talent and showmanship. They only see pure aggression as that. So that's why I gave that the 8.4, and that is my favourite album of the year so far. So, back to Teramaze. Where does this stand? It's not as good as Dark Water. Is it as good as Solaris's Darkest Days? Is it worse? Is it better? I'd say it's better. So, Teramaze Are We Soldiers is my second favourite album of the year so far. It's not as good as Dark Water's Human. Dark Water's Human had a mass amount of length to it. They had amazingly complicated songs. There was so much to that album, so much progression. Everything was thought out. There was so much variation. Teramaze is not as big, it's not as epic, there is not as much variation as Dark Water. There is variation to Teramaze's Are We Soldiers, but they have this vibe and they consistently stick and play around with that one vibe. So it's variations connected to this one thing. As for Dark Water doesn't have a thing to stick to, therefore they can keep going different areas. As for Teramaze, there's always a lot to that one vibe throughout, and then just, you know, dance around that. Their songs are a lot more on the simple side compared to Dark Waters. As for Solaris with Darkest Days, Teramaze I think have a lot more musicianship and thought put into this album, which puts it ahead of that. But as I say, it's not as good as Dark Water. So I will therefore be giving Teramaze's Are We Soldiers an 8.3. It's a great album, and I personally say worth your time. So I would like to review the previous album of Teramaze, Her Halo. At the moment I'm struggling to actually find the music so I can actually put it into my review, so if I can't, I'm going to have to maybe do it without, or just not bother. But I would like to talk about it because it is a very interesting album, Her Halo. And seeing the critical acclaim that thing got, and how much people adore it, and then what I think it'll be very, very interesting to talk about that album. So, you can think of that what you will. So, not sure if that will ever come to be. I would like it to, so at some point I'm hoping it will. But yeah, that is it for Are We Soldiers. I hope you enjoyed what I said. I hope I was insightful, and I hope you stick with me for further album reviews as well as single reviews. If not, thanks for sticking with me for this video, and if you are sticking with me, then I'll see you in the next one. Until then, guys,